Hey guys, Cat7 here. Okay, it is Saturday, February 8th, 2020, and I want to thank you for visiting the Stonewall Research Channel here on YouTube. Thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. All right, guys, well, I have a very interesting video for you here today, and it sort of centers around this ancient ship called the Syracusia. But before even mentioning the Syracusia, I wanted to talk about the library at Alexandria that burnt down. And I remember listening to Sylvie on the New Earth Channel when she was talking about it, and just how all these libraries managed to get burned down and these museums and everything else. And it was just, dumbfounding really how, a giant library, which is often these giant stone mausoleum type buildings that would house these things made of stone, you know, like 100% made of stone, and then maybe with some wooden, fixtures on the interiors or whatever it is to house the, thousands of scrolls and whatnot. So, and you can see artist renditions of these things. So there's always a wonder how the whole complete library would burn down. It seems that a stone building, kind of difficult to burn everything in a stone building. It's cordoned off by thick stone walls or whatever it was. But so she, Sylvie was questioning the whole validity of the, just it was just a fire or whatever. She was trying to make the argument that somebody intentionally burned down the whole thing. Went to every room there and set everything on fire. So what however they want to fudge history, but the burning of the Library of Alexandria was, somewhere 48 BC. And it's just interesting here what it said here: burning by Julius Caesar. The Roman general Julius Caesar was forced to set fire to his own ships during the siege of Alexandria in 48 BC. And here you see the reference to the Library of Alexandria in Wikipedia here. Okay, so it's 48 BC. So, well, how does this, relate to the Syracusia? Well, we're going to find out, and it goes even deeper than that, which is even more interesting to me in this article here in the Ancient History Encyclopedia, which seems to be a fairly mainstream academic, you know, online zine or whatever it is, encyclopedia, I suppose. But we'll get to that in a second. But let's read the let's read what it says about the Syracusian Wikipedia here. And just even before that, the reason why I'm interested in this whole thing with ancient ships and boats, I got so interested in when I started reading Voyages of the Pyramid Builders by Dr. Robert M. Schoch. And how these people would be making these transoceanic voyages with what kind of vessels were they doing this with that would carry personnel or whatever tools, who knows what. How was this done? So there seems to be some evidence of some ships that would be able to be capable of this. And the Syracusia would come to mind when looking at all of these ancient ships, because it's mentioned, in all these information that you might type in a search or whatever. So here's a bunch of artist renderings, computer generated images of what the Syracusia may have looked like. And here's one YouTube video on it, which is, I think, was like a CGI video on it, which is pretty good. and it's the only one on it that I can find anywhere. But um, I guess it's whatever their take of this history might be. But again, how many times has history been rewritten? And since the library was burnt down in 48 BC, then any sort of paper trail of this ship, which a lot of questions about it, where it went to after it was commissioned. But let's hear what the story is, and call me kooky and crazy, but it's possible that the Syracusia was the library at Alexandria, and we're going to find out why. And as I said, it goes a little bit deeper than that. So just hear me out, and pay attention to what the supposed history is on this ship. So let's look at it here. The Syracusia, Syracusia, as it is not the Syracusia, but it's kind of hard to refer to it without the "the." But Syracusia was a 110-meter, 360-foot ancient Greek ship, sometimes claimed to be the largest transport ship of antiquity. She was reportedly too big for any port in Sicily, and thus only sailed once from Syracuse in Sicily to Alexandria in the Ptolemaic kingdom of Egypt, whereupon she was given as a present to Ptolemy III of Eugertes. So this is where it went. It went to Alexandria as a gift and given as a present to Ptolemy III here, and then never heard about it again. I mean, there's no reason to write anything about it. If somebody referred to going to the library, well, why couldn't it be a floating library? But let's just keep on listening to what they have to say. Okay. General characteristics. Syracusia was designed by Archimedes and built around 240 BC by Archias of Corinth on the orders of Hieron II of Syracuse. The historian Marcion of Phasaelis said that Syracusia could carry a cargo of some 1,600 to 1,800 tons and a capacity of 1,942 passengers. She reputedly bore more than 200 soldiers, as well as a catapult. She sailed only once to berth in Alexandria, where she was later given to Ptolemaeus III, Eugertes of Egypt, and renamed Alexandria. So you see right here, it was renamed Alexandria, literally of Alexandria. Okay, so it's renamed Alexandria. Okay, so just keep listening. A discussion of the ship, as well as the complete text of Athenaeus, the late 2nd century Greek writer, who quotes a detailed description of the Syracusia from Marcion, an earlier, now lost writer, is in Casson's Ships and Seamanship in the Ancient World. Of particular interest in the discussion of the construction of the ship is the detailed description of the efforts taken to protect the hull from biofouling, which I find fascinating, including coating it with horsehair and pitch. This may be the first example of proactive anti-fouling technology designed to prevent the attachment of fouling organisms rather than to remove them. Appearance. Not much is known about the outside appearance of the ship, but Athenaeus describes that the top deck, which was wider than the rest of the ship, was supported by beautifully crafted wooden atlases instead of simply wooden columns. Additionally, the top deck featured 8 towers equipped with 2 archers and 4 fully armed men. On the bow of the ship was raised a platform for fighting, on top of which it was a giant catapult. 20 rows of oars would also have been visible from the outside, and possibly a promenade lined with flowers and tents for use by the passengers. Amenities. In terms of passenger comfort, Syracusia would be the equivalent of Titanic compared to other ships of the era. Her innovative design and sheer size allowed for the creation of various recreational spaces aboard, including a garden and an indoor bathroom with hot water. The lower levels of the ship were reserved for the crew and the soldiers on board, while the upper levels were for the use of passengers. According to Athenaeus, the ship was beautifully decorated using materials such as ivory and marble, while all public spaces were floored with mosaics depicting the entire story of the Iliad. The ship was also equipped with a library, a library, a big giant ship with a big giant library. You dig? A drawing room and a gymnasium for use by the passengers, as well as a small temple dedicated to Aphrodite. Legacy. Ptolemy's son sought to outdo Syracusia. He ordered the construction of a huge warship, the Tessacranteres, 420 feet long and bearing more than 4,000 oarsmen and 2,850 soldiers. However, according to Plutarch, it was almost immobile. Okay, so it was too big. And according to, I guess, research done on this or whatever, according to the history, quote unquote, if that's what it is, Archimedes was able to design a pulley system to pull it into, launch it. And that's what made the whole Archimedes thing so special there and this ship. So I just found it interesting. The ship was also equipped with a library, and how big was that library? And if you wanted to burn something down right quick, okay, maybe you could just set this ship on fire, and then the whole library at Alexandria is burnt into the ocean. And maybe some of the stuff that they find there in the Mediterranean by Alexandria there was the remnants of the ship, because it's all stonework and statues and all kinds of things, ivory and marble and everything on the inside of the ship. So if it burned in a harbor somewhere, well, what would be left of it? You know, just these stone statues or whatever that you find in the harbor there. And could you tell it was just, from whatever time it was? I don't know. But I'm asking that question. And it's the thing that, they renamed it the Alexandria. So, renamed Alexandria. So let's read this contemporary article by this Stella Nanova from Ancient History Encyclopedia. It's got the EU Web Awards on this online encyclopedia here. And so here's this Syracusia piece by this Stella Nanova. So it's very interesting, and when I came across it, I was like, wow. The Syracusia was an ancient sailing vessel designed by Archimedes in the 3rd century BCE. She was fabled as being one of the largest ships ever built in antiquity, and as having a sumptuous decor of exotic woods and marble, along with towers, statues, a gymnasium, a library, and even a temple. A new approach, and here's what I like about it. It is a new approach, and as you have this young journalist here, I'm thinking to myself, oh boy, let's see what she has to say. A new approach. Ancient seafaring is usually perceived as a cabotage maritime navigation. The term comes from the French vercabateur, meaning traveling by the coast, quote unquote. People of antiquity, Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans, usually sailed following the coastline and did not take the risk of going too far out on the high seas. Nevertheless, there are sources confirming that there were exceptions, and the first of them took place as far back as the 3rd century BCE, and I bet even before that. According to the Smithsonian, they were doing it back 12,000 years ago, so why not at any time? Doesn't matter when. in Sicily under the ruling king of Hiero II of Syracuse, 270 to 215 BCE, a ship with stunning dimensions was built. The material used for the construction of that giant boat equated to the material for 60 regular ships. That's a lot of material there. What was more, the vessel was meant to leave the secure coastal lanes and to cross the Mediterranean Sea. The ship was given a name, Syracusia, and represented what could be called the first liner of antiquity, quote unquote. Archimedes. Archimedes of Syracuse was an ancient scientist and inventor who lived between 287 and 212 BCE. In his book on floating bodies, written around 250 BCE, he describes some of the principles of hydrostatics he had discovered. He was busy with this particular research when he allegedly pronounced his famous Eureka and started running around naked as he was in a bath. That story might have been a bit exaggerated by Vitruvius, who was the first written source of that episode over a century later, but it is certain that Archimedes made great scientific inventions which gained him lasting fame as one of the leading scholars of antiquity, or who knows when this guy really lived and what past we're really talking about, and when that was exactly, who knows. But still interesting. Archimedes was persuaded to correspond with the ruler of Syracuse king Hiero II. In one letter, he boasted of his abilities to move any heavy object in the world he wanted. "Give me a place to stand and I will move the earth," he declared, and immediately drew the attention of the Syracusian king. Impressed by the knowledge of the famous scholar, Hiero II decided to give him a special task to design a ship, the biggest and largest one he could invent. Archimedes did his best and surpassed all expectations. The Syracusia. When Archias of Corinth built the ship according to Archimedes' plans, it turned out that she was so big that no harbor in Sicily was large enough to admit her. Hiero II had to think long and hard about what to do with her. Eventually, he decided to send a ship as a present to Ptolemy, the king of Egypt. The Alexandrian port appeared the only one that could host this marvelous construction. Hence, originally named as Syracusia, quote unquote, the ship was renamed Alexandria, quote unquote, and prepared for loading. Okay, so here's where I get my sneaky suspicions that the Library of Alexandria was actually the Alexandria, which was probably moored in the harbor there, and that's what the Library of Alexandria was, and that's how the whole thing could have got burnt down to the ground with, just a simple fire. But maybe that's what we're talking about, and it wasn't a particular place or building, but maybe a floating library, and it's, when it was decommissioned. I'm just saying, why not? It's a possibility, okay? So look at this now. This is where it's kind of kooky to me, but Athenaeus in his book Deipnosophistae cited the only description of the vessel and its load was written by the historian Marcion of Basilis. According to his narrative, the Syracusia Alexandria was loaded with, get this, okay? We're talking about when now? What BC now? 250 BC? 60,000 measures of corn. Corn? Are you talking about corn? See, because corn is only found in the New World. Corn comes from the New World. How could this be? Because isn't it that Christopher Columbus discovered the New World? What happened? 60,000 measures of corn. Okay. 10,000 jars of Sicilian saltfish, 20,000 talents, 500,000 to 600,000 kilograms, and 1,102,000 and 1,323,000 pounds weight of wool, 20,000 talents of other cargo, okay, in roughly the same measure, okay, is 1,323,000 pounds, 2,000 measures of water in a container for drinking and bathing. Besides all this, on board there were also the crew, passengers, soldiers, and even horses. So there had to be a little stable there too. Okay. Make room for the corn. Don't forget that. Dimensions. The facts we know about the Syracusia come from the text of Athenaeus, and they are as follows. 1. Length 55 meter, 180 feet. Some other sources give 110 meter, 360 feet. Cargo capacity between 1,600 and 1,800 tons, and 1,940 passengers, warriors, and crew, as well as 20 horses with separate stalls for everyone. Timber used for building the Syracusia equal to the material needed for 60 standard trireme ships. Okay, the standard ships, which these trireme ships were pretty long, 50 meter long and 6 meter wide. Construction period, 1 year, built by 300 workers. That took a year to build this thing. It's a long time for 300 workers. We know about ancient authors' tendency to exaggerate the facts in their enthusiasm to describe something extraordinary. Even so, the Syracusia must have been a remarkable ship. Stories have been told about her sea launch that had appeared impossible by the conventional means at that time. The ship just could not have been drawn out of the dock, no matter how many men had been used. Archimedes amazed Hero II once again. He was able to launch the ship single-handedly using a system of pulleys. The block and tackle pulley system was one of many technological inventions of the Syracusian scholar. See, that's how he got the boat to move, the ship. The wondrous interior. The size of the Syracusia was not only impressive, the only impressive fact about her. According to Marcion, the ship's amenities would have stunned even modern passengers and cruise lovers. Cypress wood, citrus wood, and ivory were some of the described materials. Also, all rooms had floors composed of mosaic work of all kinds of stones. This illustrated the whole story of the Iliad and represented, in fact, the earliest mosaic depiction in literature. Countless drawings and statues, goblets, and vases adorn the internal space of the Syracusia. The ship was equipped with a library and reading room, a drawing room, a gymnasium, a bathroom, a dining room, and kitchen spaces with wooden stores, ovens, and mills. Near the head of the vessel, there was a cistern of fresh water for drinking and bathing. According to some calculations, around 78 tons in capacity. That's a lot of fresh water. Next to the cistern was built in-sea water fish tank full of fish for the cook's use. Sounds great already. I'm ready to book it. As what is that? The Carnival cruise line has to Syracusia. I don't know. I want to go. Midnight buffet. Upper deck was supported not by regular columns, but by statues of Atlas, the Titan who held up the sky in Greek mythology, of 6 cubits high, around 3 meter, 118 inches. Along the uppermost deck, there were walks with gardens of different sorts of flowers and plants. Some parts were shaded with roofs of tiles. Others had tents roofed with branches of white ivy and vine. The roots of the plants were earthed up into special casks full of soil and regularly watered. The magnificent walks led to a temple of Aphrodite, with a floor of agate stone, furnished in the most exquisite manner with statues and pictures. 142 cabins for first-class passengers were also located on the second deck. The crew and around 200, according to other 400 soldiers, were accommodated in the lower deck. 20 separate horse stalls were part of that area too. The ship was also well protected. There were 8 towers with 4 men and 2 archers on each. Between 200 and 400 soldiers were ready for orders at a special deck in front of the vessel where a giant catapult was mounted. A palisade was built all around the ship to prevent attempts to board. 4 wooden and 8 iron anchors ensured her security at port. Unfortunately, the Syracusia sailed just once on that trip from Sicily to North Africa. It is not known for sure what happened to her after that, as she was never mentioned again in any later historical sources. Yeah, because that was the floating library at Alexandria, and after it was there and moored in the harbor over there, nobody had to mention it again. Because it was equipped with towers and stone rooms and floors and everything. It just could sit there forever and be the library at Alexandria and get burnt down because it was a wooden ship. And that's what I'm saying, okay? Just because, there's a lot of questions about it, and that's been some of the questions, not only by Sylvie and me and other people, okay? The library at Alexandria, what was it? And how did it get burnt down? These giant stone mausoleum type buildings, unless it was purposely done. Which it certainly could have been. I'm not saying, believe me and say, believe this story and don't believe that story, but we don't really know what happens. But it just seems so funny that this ship was renamed Alexandria, and, they don't use the prefix on it or whatever, so it was the Alexandria, and it had a rather large library aboard this luxury liner cargo ship that just so happened to be carrying corn. And what's with this girl anyway? How dare she say it had corn on it? But let's see what the journalist was talking about. So this is Stella Nanova. And she says, I am particularly interested in antiquity. I have a bachelor's in classical philology, a master's in ancient religions and cultures, and a PhD in ancient history. So she's got enough sheepskins to choke an elephant there. And I have taught classical languages, Latin and ancient Greek, for several years at university, and I claim that love for antiquity can be very contagious. I got this passion from my exciting professors, and latter, in my turn, work for passing it on to my students. As my family is on a constant move, we have lived in 4 different countries for the last 6 years. I worked as an assistant professor, a teacher, a sworn translator, a consular staff, and a brain trainer. Nevertheless, my love for European antiquity always prevails. I maintain my interest in the ancient Greco-Roman world by participating in different ancient history groups and forums, writing online educational materials, and publishing articles on my personal ancient history blog. So that's who that is, this young, PhD in ancient history and masters in ancient religions and cultures, talking about the Syracusia here. And I mean, I would imagine it's not a very long article here that she's written for, this online encyclopedia here, ancient history encyclopedia. And did she make a mistake? 60,000 measures of corn. Corn comes from the Americas only. See? So how'd that happen? Did she make a mistake? Did they know something we don't know? So I don't know, but the whole thing is kind of shady to me or whatever, and just this whole seems to me like it's possible that the Syracusia, renamed the Alexandria, could have been a floating library. I don't know, but it sort of makes sense to me. I don't know, call it what you want, but I don't know, that's what I'm thinking. All right, so anyway, guys, I hope you found that interesting. I don't know if that connection can really be made or could it? Okay, I'm begging the question, but it seems to me that it's quite a possibility. They didn't know what happened to the ship. There's nothing said about it afterwards. Well, it became its resting place after it was decommissioned after its one journey, but I don't really believe that. It probably made a lot of journeys and it was finally decommissioned. What do you do with this thing? Well, something as well built as this thing or whatever could just become a floating, building. We have them today, right? So we decommission ships and they become like, floating buildings moored in harbors and whatnot and along docks and whatever. So I don't know, but it makes a good story anyway. All right, guys. Well, anyway, I thought you might find that interesting. And the thing about the corn, is I read a lot of articles about this, but it's all pretty standard stuff, pretty much, except when I ran across this corn thing by this, PhD in ancient history. And I don't think she made a mistake there. So are we starting to reform our picture of the past? I don't know, but the Syracusia was just something that seems so very interesting. Look at this one. It's just like crazy, man. All right. Anyway, guys, if you liked the video, please hit the like button, and I will be back with a new video on the Giants real soon. All right, guys. Buckeye 7 signing out. Peace.